approval of him. The ladies, as usual, went a step further and expressed their opinions openly in the plainest words. The case under consideration, so far as they were concerned, was the scandalous case of a man who had passed them over entirely without notice. Mrs. Mayor could only attribute such an outrage to the native ferocity of a savage. Mrs. Doctor took a stronger view still, and considered it as proceeding from the inbred brutality of a hog. The hour of waiting for the travelling coach wore on, and the creeping night stole up the hillside softly. One by one the stars appeared, and the first lights twinkled in the windows of the inn. As the darkness came, the last idlers deserted the square. As the darkness came, the mighty silence of the forest above flowed in on the valley, and strangely and suddenly hushed the lonely little town. The hour of waiting wore out, and the figure of the doctor, walking backward and forward anxiously, was still the only living figure left in the square. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes were counted out by the doctor's watch before the first sound came through the night silence to warn him of the approaching carriage. Slowly it emerged into the square, at the walking pace of the horses, and drew up, as a hearse might have drawn up, at the door of the inn. "Is the doctor here?" asked a woman's voice, speaking, out of the darkness of the carriage, in the French language. "I am here, madam," replied the doctor, taking a light from the landlord's hand and opening the carriage door. The first face that the light fell on was the face of the lady who had just spoken, a young, darkly beautiful woman, with the tears standing thick and bright in her eager black eyes. The second face revealed was the face of a shrivelled old negress, sitting opposite the lady on the back seat. The third was the face of a little sleeping child in the negress's lap. With a quick gesture of impatience, the lady signed to the nurse to leave the carriage first with the child. "Pray take them out of the way," she said to the landlady. "Pray take them to their room." She got out herself when her request had been complied with. Then the light fell clear for the first time on the further side of the carriage, and the fourth traveller was disclosed to view. He lay helpless on a mattress, supported by a stretcher, his hair, long and disordered, under a black skull-cap, his eyes wide open, rolling to and fro, ceaselessly anxious, the rest of his face as void of all expression of the character within him and the thought within him as if he had been dead. There was no looking at him now and guessing what he might once have been. The leaden blank of his face met every question as to his age, his rank, his temper, and his looks, which that face might once have answered, in impenetrable silence. Nothing spoke for him now but the shock that had struck him with the death in life of paralysis. The doctor's eye questioned his lower limbs, and death in life answered, "I am here." The doctor's eye, rising attentively by way of his hands and arms, questioned upward and upward to the muscles around his mouth, and death in life answered, "I am coming." In the face of a calamity so unsparing and so dreadful, there was nothing to be said. The silent sympathy of help was all that could be offered to the woman who stood weeping at the carriage door. As they bore him up on his bed across the hall of the hotel, his wandering eyes encountered the face of his wife. They rested on her for a moment, and in that moment he spoke. "The child?" he said in English, with a slow, thick, labouring articulation. "The child is safe upstairs," she answered faintly. "My desk?" "It is in my hands. Look, I won't trust it to anybody. I am taking care of it for you myself." He closed his eyes for the first time after that answer, and said no more. Tenderly and skilfully he was carried up the stairs, with his wife on one side of him, and the doctor, ominously silent, on the other. The landlord and the servants, following, saw the door of his room open and close on him, heard the lady burst out crying hysterically as soon as she was alone with the doctor and the sick man, saw the doctor come out half an hour later with his ruddy face a shade paler than usual, pressed him eagerly for information, and received but one answer to all their inquiries: "Wait till I have seen him tomorrow. Ask me nothing tonight." They all knew the doctor's ways, and they augured ill when he left them hurriedly with that reply. So the first 2 English visitors of the year came to the baths of Wildbad in the season of 1832. End of Prologue, Chapter 1.